in the Middle East. But we move on now, and in a significant development in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, the Kremlin has denied reports that it has agreed to peace talks with Ukraine in the Vatican. This comes after US media outlets suggested that discussions could be hosted in the Vatican as early as mid-June. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov clarified that no formal agreements had been made regarding such talks, and any future meetings remain unconfirmed. Last week, Russian and Ukrainian officials met face-to-face for the first time in more than 3 years in Istanbul, but the talks ended without an agreement on a ceasefire. Russian President Vladimir Putin has consistently rejected proposals for a 30-day truce and has instead suggested working on a broader yet vague memorandum outlining Russia's position. Meanwhile, the military situation on the ground remains intense. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that its forces shot down 105 Ukrainian drones, including dozens targeting Moscow. Moscow's mayor confirmed that nearly 40 drones were intercepted as they approached the Russian capital, briefly halting flights at major airports. On the front lines, fierce battles continue, particularly in the Donetsk region, where Russian forces claim advances are being made. Reports indicate that as the conflict enters its next year, Russia has seized substantial parts of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea, Luhansk, and portions of the Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. In his latest address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky highlighted the ongoing clashes around Pokrovsk, but refrained from confirming any territorial losses to Russia. Well, joining us to discuss these latest developments is Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations at the Macalester College and a Senior Fellow, who's joining us from St. Paul, Minnesota in the United States of America. Andrew, thank you ever so much for joining us. Let's first touch on these reports denied by the Kremlin that the next set of face-to-face talks between Russia and Ukraine have been organised. Given the fact that these talks in Turkey ended so swiftly and without a concrete resolution, what do you think comes next, specifically from Donald Trump and the US administration, which have played such a key part in these ongoing negotiations of peace between Russia and Ukraine?
There is so much theatrics involved here between the Ukrainian government, the Russian government, and the US government. It's almost unbelievable, except it's only too believable. Here's what's actually happening. The Russians are winning the war, incrementally, slowly, but they're winning, and therefore President Putin has zero incentive to actually agree to a ceasefire or a permanent peace agreement. President Zelensky is desperate, but that's not going to happen. And Trump, who really wants a Nobel Peace Prize more than anything else, I think, has tried to broker some kind of peace agreement, but he's trying to broker it on the basis of nothing that really matters. He can seduce Putin all he wants, but Putin knows what he wants. And what he wants is the 4 oblasts. He doesn't want to take over all of Ukraine. He wants Ukraine demilitarized and not in NATO, but he wants those 4 oblasts, and he's just about going to get them. Why in the world would he agree to any kind of ceasefire brokered by Trump and demanded by Zelensky? It's not going to happen.
Andrew, given that assumption, an opinion that you have then, which is shared by many experts, that Putin is delaying this conflict and delaying peace talks in order to continue the military gains that he's making. The European leaders have called for further sanctions. Ukraine, of course, have pushed for further moves. What's next needed from the Trump administration, who let's be honest, he stepped back away from these sanctions because he wants to keep the door open for Russia to agree to a deal. But if the case is that Russia's never going to agree, then what's next for these peace talks?
I'm not sure what's next for the peace talks. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think if we go up to 30,000 feet and we think about what Trump wants with respect to Russia, he wants a deal with Russia. Not about Ukraine, but he wants a deal that's going to sort of draw them away from China and, the reverse Nixon 1972 thing. And I'm being charitable here, because I'm not sure that President Trump, I want to be respectful, I'm not sure that he actually thinks these things through in grand strategy terms, but I think that's his impulse. And I don't think that Ukraine matters all that much to him in that context. He's willing to throw Ukraine under the bus. He's willing to withdraw mostly from NATO around these issues. He's willing to push the European and Canadian NATO partners to actually up their game a little bit. And then he can pivot America's grand strategic sort of needs to the Indo-Pacific to deal with China. But I just don't see President Trump brokering any kind of peace deal, because there's no peace deal on the table. The Russians are winning. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it's a thing. The Russians are winning, and they're going to continue winning until they get everything that they want.
Yes, Andrew, and very briefly before we move on, I do want to touch on these strikes that Russia says they have reportedly downed 105 drones with dozens targeting Moscow. Very quickly, what's the significance of this level of drone strikes specifically targeting Moscow by Ukraine?
Well, I would say two things about that. One of which is this drone warfare thing is very new, and we're not sure how it's going to shake out ultimately. It is just a terrifically new sort of strategic development. As much as Russia uses drones against Ukraine and Ukraine uses drones against Russia, most of them get shot down. So there's some symbolic importance to these attacks, but for the most part, 90% of these drones get shot down by both sides. So at the end of the day, it's not like the evolution of nuclear weapons or strategic bombing in World War II or anything like that. It's just, it makes the news.
Yes, Andrew, you will be staying with us, and of course we will bring you all of the updates that we get from the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. But heading to North America now, and the Republican-controlled US House of Representatives have passed